500 years of football expertise and the future of the game. Powered by Sumer Sports, come together, breaking down the big board with the guys that were in the room. Today on the evaluation panel, we are joined by former director of scouting for the Falcons and the Chiefs, and the former GM of the Chicago Bears, Sumer Sports senior evaluator, Phil Emery. Also on the panel is Sumer Sports senior defensive end evaluator and former director of pro scouting for the Carolina Panthers, Mark Koncz. We're bringing it all together with the most sophisticated sports technology ever engineered. This is the evaluation defensive line. This is where the game starts and ends. The line of scrimmage. No glamour, no headlines, just violence in a 3-yard box. Scouts call the skills of defensive linemen get off, leverage, and motor. But what that really means is who wants it more? The draft is full of big men who look the part. It's a scout's job to single out the very few who play like it. Welcome to the evaluation. I'm your host, Ator Ewan, and today we're talking my favorite position. We're talking the defensive line. And I am pleased to be joined by Phil Emery and Mark Koncz.
Love you.
Not too much. Gentlemen, how we feeling?
Fantastic. Great. Ready to talk some ball.
Beautiful, beautiful. Phil, you're up first. Who is your very first evaluation?
Well, I really kind of wanted to talk about you, E.
Me?
Yeah. We were talking defensive lineman at breakfast. When I looked at you and I saw how wide you are and stout you are through the chest and shoulders, I thought, that's Grady Jarrett right there.
I appreciate that comp. I'll take that any day.
But we want to move on and talk about Peter Woods from Clemson, their defensive tackle. Peter's a stout, very good with his hands. He's very good in the box. We're talking about from tackle to tackle along the offensive line in terms of redirecting runs, making backs change lane. He clogs them up. He's hard to knock off on his feet. In the pass game, he's sufficient. I think he has the physical tools in terms of body quickness, hand speed, closing speed to be better, but right now he's at the sufficient level.
And would you say in this current era of the game, defensive tackles are expected to provide more with pass rush than they were maybe 10, 15 years ago?
There's more passes in the league now than there were in the old days. My age, right? So what I see in him is he's not quite as instinctive or have as good a feel for finishing on his target, which as a pass rusher is a quarterback naturally, as he is as a rundown player, is finding the ball through schemes, block pressure, getting knocked around and still being able to make plays. One thing when I look at him that really stands out in regards to the pass rush, he averages around 70 snaps a game, where most of the defensive linemen are 35 to 40. His pass rush may be blunted, his development, because he simply gets fatigued. In most NFL teams, you're going to have a true rotation. Even your best players, you would like to be between 35, 45 reps a game.
Thank you, Phil. Mark, who's your first player eval?
David Bailey, and I chose him because he is the best pass rush producer in this draft. If you look at all of his metrics, his pressures, his hits, his hurries, he does a phenomenal job of getting to the quarterback. He is exceptional off the ball. He is lightning quick. He has a great get-off. Motor and toughness, outstanding. He has an unbelievable ability for a guy that's 6'3" to bend, to get around the corner. I think a lot of that has to do with his lower body strength. I think he squats over 550 pounds. He benches over 400. He's like a 4'5", 40 guy. So he's got all the measurables, but he also has the heart. He's a relentless pass rusher, never gives up. As a complete player, he has to get a little bit better against the run.
He talks about him being explosive. He's one of those players that I call my wife in the room. When they jump off the tape and you see somebody that has something that's rare and gifted, that's why you're there as a scout, right? When you watch Bailey come off the ball and rush a passer, you get the big wows. That's the reason he's going to make money and others aren't.
Phil, do you think he's as quick as Von Miller?
Von's probably a little bit better all-around athlete, but I think this guy's faster. I think he closes the distance between the spot he starts, going past that tackle and finishing on the quarterback. That's a blur.
That's very high praise for David Bailey.
Yeah.
Now it's time for our first deep dive from Sumer Sports data analyst and football integration lead, Sam Bruckhouse. Sam.
Here we got David Bailey and Peter Woods. These are two of the top guys. I think these guys may be considered potentially, depending on how things go, in the top 5 picks by a lot of teams. With David Bailey, we have the blue chip talent. He's also a transfer. We've seen teams like the Rams like to go toward transfer rushers. Jared Verse, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, these types of guys, that could be David Bailey. His top Sumer trait is stunting and getting to the passer. He's gonna be used a lot in pass rush games, and then he's gonna get to a point where he can get to the quarterback. And don't get me wrong, Peter Woods on the inside is great at stunting too. We also see a defensive tackle who can disengage and make plays in other gaps that aren't necessarily his. But when it comes down to Peter Woods, this guy is going to be quality at everything, and that's what you want from a defensive tackle. While on the edge, David Bailey is more of a specialized pass rusher. A little cause for concern that we've seen with him over the years is he's not gonna win on those speed rushes. He is a fast guy, he can probably do it, but he is most effective when stunting and really causing trouble for a defensive line. I'd like to see his time to pressure go up at the next level, perhaps in a different use case, not in a Texas Tech or Stanford defense. That ends up happening.
Thank you, Sam. Now, Phil, there's still a lot of talent left on this board, so who is your second evaluation?
Thanks for asking, because I'm really excited about this player. Big Citrus from Iowa State, Domonique Orange. You like that name, right? I love
Good one.
Big Citrus.
Real good one.
It sums him up. He can control the inside seams. He's a true two-gap player. And the thing I really like about him, he has good pass rush. He has about 47, 48 pressures in his career, and he has so much power, he pushes the player right back into the quarterback. His pass rush is good. Motor and toughness, very good. Run defense, very good. His finish is very good.
So you're saying he could play along every spot on the defensive line in certain situations?
In certain situations, but when he knows it's time to go get the passer and you put him out on an edge, his power is overwhelming. So very exciting player.
Mark, what do you have next?
I took a guy that I thought had a lot of kind of a hidden value, a guy named Wesley Williams. He plays at Duke. What he is like, you talk about sleeper picks, a guy that really plays with great effort. He has what we call football temperament. Two guys are blocking him. He's going to find a way to split it. Excellent change of direction. He has a lot of hidden production, and he's got very, very good instincts. He's 6'3". He's about 265. He comes off the ball really quick. His motor and toughness, excellent. Durability, very good. Has no missed time over the last 2 years. Run defense, good. He's very, very quick when he stunts. He doesn't have the sack production, right? He has 4 sacks, I believe, on the year. But if you look at his hits on a quarterback, he has the 7th most hits on a quarterback of anybody in this draft. He'll probably have to make it on special teams, be a sub-package player maybe, but 2 years from now, this guy's gonna be a really good NFL player.
Mark, what I really liked about him was the versatility that he has.
Yeah.
With a little bit more girth, he's gonna be a heck of a 3 technique. He's good in coverage, he's really instinctive. So yeah, it's a player to be excited about.
Sam, it's time for our next deep dive.
So here we got 2 guys, and I want to focus in on something with the tracking data that's really interesting. We can highlight tackle probability at any given point in the play with any player. And these 2 players have a little different story. I'm going to start off with Domonique Orange. Here's a guy who is excellent in pursuit. Here's a guy who will increase his tackle probability as the play goes on. What does that mean? He is tracking the ball. He is using his position from the defensive line to continue trying to make a tackle. That can make a big difference at the NFL level, where you really have these running backs and wide receivers who can shed tackles. When you can get those first layer defenders up into the next level, that can be a big play that changes a game. Wesley Williams, we haven't seen do all that well. However, here's an indicator that maybe he can do it well. He shows a lot of quality traits, but he also shows one in another key thing. He is able to make plays in different gaps. So let's say he has the C gap from that edge position that he likes playing, where he has great size. He can make a move and make a run defense in the B or the A gap as well. That also shows that he has a level of penetration, but I do think that pursuit and his ability to play with a lot of effort could come at the next level. It just may be what's pushing Wesley Williams down the consensus big board right now, and that's what could be bringing Domonique Orange up the consensus big board. Let's see how they interview, because this is something that I think teams will highlight.
Appreciate you, Sam. Phil, do you have one more eval for us?
I do. Another nose tackle who is a true nose tackle. Kayden McDonald from Ohio State. He is coming into his own. There's some games that this young man has production that's off the chain. Every tackle in the box is being made by him. and he is just starting to play. He's a big man, and sometimes with big men, it takes them a little while to get their body weight under control and their conditioning. Technique, good. Motor and toughness are good. For a man his size to play as hard as he does is impressive. His pass rush is sufficient. What he doesn't have is a high level of athleticism.
Yeah.
That's an issue when it comes to rush the passer. Now, he has some pressure production, but it's flash production. It's not consistent. We've had a lot of conversations about how the old 34 3-down lineman front is changed because of all the passing. Well, you need 3 defensive linemen that can hold 2 gaps. You're not going to run the ball on this guy inside.
Mark, take us home.
Phil, that was like perfect segue to my next guy.
Always here to help.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Here's a little money. No, I want to talk about LT Overton from Alabama. And he's just like you talked about. He's a guy that he plays everywhere. He plays from nose tackle to an outside linebacker. So he's my most versatile. He gets off the ball quick. He can take on the guy head up, and then he can shed the offensive lineman in either direction to make plays. He's just sufficient with his technique besides power, motor, and toughness. I just give him good here. He's better against the pass than the run. Durability, very good. Hasn't missed any time over his career. He's hard to move. He's got a burst. He's got twitch. Once he does clear, he can get to the quarterback quickly. This guy's like the Swiss Army knife. He makes plays both in the run and the pass, and he's a phenomenal athlete. He would excite me. I'd love to have him on the team that I was on.
I took a glance at him. No, he might be a guy that might benefit from being just one position.
Exactly, and that's what
really
I
repping the heck out of that and
Yeah.
really accelerating as a player.
I think he's got the ability to go a lot of different places.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All righty.
Sam, I hope you got your fins on because it's time for our last deep dive.
So E, with the tracking data and defensive linemen, this is a place where we really believe in our tracking stats. You see it with wide receivers, you see it with defensive linemen because both of those positions have to win one-on-one. Let's talk about speed rushing. E, former defensive lineman, you know what we're talking about here. You gotta win within 2.5 seconds. Why? Most passing plays are designed to go off in 3 seconds. So 2.5 seconds, a very key element right here. Kayden is a quality speed rusher. He does that at like the 95th, 96th percentile amongst prospects. Overton also does a very good job at this. That's what separates these two guys from the pack. They also have an ability to create in the run game, but when you're able to get to the quarterback quick, it makes all the difference.
Thank you, Sam. There's still a ton of talent left on the board, so let's go to Sumer Sports senior analyst Sean Syed for some rapid-fire evaluations.
It's the lightning round. Reuben Bain is a game wrecker with outstanding strength and balance. He has a good get-off and can walk tackles back to the quarterback. Keldric Faulk is an athletic defensive lineman that can play multiple spots up front. He flashes the ability to rush with speed to power and can dip at the top of a rush. Cashius Howell is a productive edge rusher with a well-rounded pass rush plan. He has a strong lower body and will look to improve defending the run at the next level. Caleb Banks is a stout run defender with natural strength. He can create pressure on the inside and understands his run keys. Lee Hunter can push the pocket with his bull rush. He has the ability to get hands on blockers and will look to improve against horizontal runs. Christian Miller is a versatile lineman with a high motor. He can slip defenders and get up the field to cut off paths for running backs.
Earlier, I sat down with Sumer Sports CEO Larissa Horton. Here's our next segment, the SAI Check, powered by Sumer Sports. So, Larissa, the best edge rushers, as we know, the elite edge rushers, can make a lot of money in the league. Is it worth it, though? Are those guys like the Micah Parsons? How do we know if they're really worth it? How do we know how special they are?
So this play in particular really exemplifies why he got the deal he got. When we look at where he was positioned, he had a really low chance of actually getting a sack. But he overcame so many things to really track down the passer, and hence, obviously, we saw the sack.
And your technology can determine that percentage of the likelihood of the sack?
So we're looking at how far are you, how many people are in your way, how many offensive linemen do you have to get by, how much do you have to go chase the passer. All of those things are taken into account to understand what's the likeliness of the situation being successful.
And does it also take into account blockers' ability as well?
It is looking at how long is the hold, how long do you have to get around them before the passer is actually getting more distance. And all of those things, it's calculating every second that the play is going on.
So what you're saying is that Micah Parsons deserves every single penny that he got?
He definitely deserves every single penny. He is doing things that most in the league could not. We are measuring every single time he does it, and he's really breaking the model. He is showcasing skills that other people cannot.
I love what you do, Larissa. I love what you do.
I do too.
Earlier, our very own Mike Mayock had an opportunity to sit down with someone who helped shape the game. Let's see what they had to say.
We've got a guy here who played high school football in the Boston area, played his college football at Villanova University outside of Philadelphia, drafted in the second round by the Raiders, and went on to be one of the best defensive linemen in the history of the NFL. He's in the Hall of Fame, and I'm proud to call him one of my best friends. Howie, how you doing, brother?
I am great. It's a long way from that 16-year-old visit that I made to Boston College, and you were my host. You and I have been friends for a long, long time.
I mean, when you look back at 16-year-old Howie, when you visited Boston College, what do you remember about Howie?
Tall kid, you know, skin and bones. Really didn't know what I was doing. I could run, jump, do all those things. I was 6'5" at 16, and, you know, go to a visit down to Boston College, and, you know, you guys had men. You know, they had tattoos and facial hair, and I wasn't shaving. I barely had hair under my armpits, and I was 6'5", 220 at 16. I had a hard time trying to envision myself being at that school with those guys at that level. You know, little did I know I would go down to Villanova that summer after I committed there and go to summer school, and they gave me a meal card, and I opened up training camp at 264. So, you know, I was a big person waiting to happen.
What I'd like to do is kind of transition a little bit, fast forward to the draft process.
Who?
And hear a little bit about, I mean, you and I played together in the blue-gray game that year.
Yeah.
And you were the MVP, and I think it probably helped accelerate.
You still think you were robbed.
I'm still pissed, brother.
Like, I'll tell you what I'll do. The trophy they gave me was literally like a bowling trophy. It broke on the way home, so you can have it.
Just been named the MVP of an All-Star game. You come back to Villanova, and now, you know, this is kind of pre-combine for the most part. Like, where were you running? Where were they timing you? What was going on?
Getting through that process leading up to the draft, Mike, I ran for everybody. I did whatever they wanted me to do. Earl Leggett came in, and he asked me to get in my stance, take 2 steps up the field, plant my outside foot, and come underneath, and he left. But I signed a then record deal for 38, 48, 58, 68, 78, and an option year at 88. So I was rolling in the dough. Walked in that locker room. Guys are smoking Salem lights. They're playing cards. You could spin 360 in that locker room, and every single turn, you're seeing another great Hall of Fame player. Going to that organization was unique to other organizations in the sense they believed in a type. They wanted physical, strong, fast. And, you know, I had gotten into a little bit of trouble my senior year. In a way, I kind of think that helped me with the Raiders. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. There were very few choir boys on that team.
Guys like Gene Upshaw and Art Shell. If you don't have 5 fights in a practice as a team, you know, something's wrong. But I think I had like 7 sacks my rookie year, came in on 3rd down, which was a perfect kind of transition to year 2. They put me at left defensive end, which is, you know, strong side end. Year 3, it was like the Matrix. It was like, you know, the screen went from just garbled numbers to I see it, I know it. I would carry, at that point, we were still using reel-to-reel film.
16 millimeter projector, I'm guessing you would carry around.
I'd carry it home, and I'd carry it on the road. I would come home, and I'd put a sheet up on the wall in our bedroom, and I'd watch film there.
Wow. So, Hal, I look at you,
from, afar, kind of as an evaluator, forget all the unbelievable physical talent, power, et cetera, you were born with and developed with hard work, but all the film work, all the other things that went into trying to figure out pre-snap, would you call them instincts?
Luck and instinct, whatever. You make your luck. You make your instinct. I truly believe that. When you get into the NFL, your physical elevator is through the roof. Your mental elevator is in the basement.
Yes.
And as you go through your career, these two elevators are going in opposite directions. Now, the mental elevator, you can speed that up.
Yep.
You can't do anything about the physical elevator. And more often than not, by the time you mentally figure it out, your physical elevator's in the basement, you can't do a damn thing about it.
Right.
And, so I say, what can I control out of those two elevators? The only thing I can control is I am going to be the smartest guy that I possibly can.
I would love to clip that answer off and let every college football player in the country watch it. The flip side to that is if you could give advice to 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade kids, what would you tell that age group?
I'll tell you what I said to my kids. If you want to play football, this is what you have to do. 1, it's physical training. 2, it's, mental toughness. 3, it's competitiveness. All those things kind of show up in players. But, I would say early on, particularly at that age, because I was a late bloomer and, people think that, you got to play one sport.
No.
This is the way you have to do it, and there's no other way.
Right.
Well, I'm sitting up here at the top of the mountain in Arizona saying, nope, there's another way to do it.
Howie, thank you for your time today. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime, buddy. As always. You should have been that MVP of the blue-gray game. I'm telling you. Yeah, I'll see if I go up in the attic and get that trophy.
I'd really appreciate that. Thanks, man.
Thanks so much, Mike. Sacks get all the love when it comes to contract and award season time, but pressures might actually be the barometer when it comes to seeing who's playing well. This is strange, but true.
So you want to find a guy who can get to the quarterback. What if I told you the stat you should be looking for is pressures, not sacks? Not because you don't want sacks, but because sacks are harder to predict. 3 times less likely to be consistent year over year than are pressures. Meaning, if you post a high pressure total, like Josh Hines-Allen has every year since 2021, chances are much better you will do that again the next year and the year after that. Sack totals are more volatile, as Hines-Allen numbers show as well. It makes sense if you think about it. Pressures are the process, ability to win a matchup. Sacks are the result, and the result often hinges on things outside the defender's control. But I would argue that the process has tangible value also, because while pressures don't often end the play the way sacks do, they still impact them greatly. Since 2016, clean dropbacks without pressure have averaged about 1/4 point of expected points added. Dropbacks with pressure but without a sack had an expected points added of 83% less. Considering pressures happen every 2.5 dropbacks on average, that is a lot of lost production for offenses league-wide. And I'll give you a guess. Which of these Aiden Hutchinson numbers from 2023 led to more EPA lost for Lions opponents? Clue? It's not the one that got all the attention.
It's my pleasure to welcome back to the round table, Lindsay Rhodes of Sumer Sports.
Thank you. I'm really eager to get your thoughts on this pressures versus sacks conversation because it feels like it's everywhere. I mean, it's certainly from an evaluation standpoint in the draft. It is a conversation in the season. The Jaguars just talked about it at their end-of-year press conference, and James Gladstone said essentially what I just said about pressure sometimes being more of a storyteller than the sack numbers. And a lot of people were like, what is he talking about? I wonder how you guys value the pressure and just winning the one-on-one. How much do you need to see that actual finish?
It's an interesting conversation because number one, just think about the logic of it. You don't plan a pressure, right? Mm-hmm. You plan on putting the quarterback on the ground. That's all the efforts made to rush the passer is to meet at the quarterback. So pressure is kind of an end result on the way there that you may have missed, or the quarterback just happened to move or step up. Anytime that you cause the offense to get off schedule, to disrupt their timing, is a darn good thing. There are some exceptions, though. When you're talking about you go out on the field and you're playing Caleb Williams, a Michael Vick, a Lamar Jackson, and that pressure may end up being the worst thing that happened to you. So there are some downsides against great mobile
Worse for the
quarterbacks.
defense? In what way?
You get a mobile quarterback out on the perimeter and you don't know if he's going to run or pass. It causes people to get out of position. It causes people to freeze. You put them in a position where they have a difficult time making quick decisions, and that's when big plays happen. And when you just say pressure, that doesn't mean it's always a good thing. It's just an end result on their way to the quarterback.
It's funny you say that because I don't think I've ever thought about that from a defensive standpoint, that guy getting out of the pocket actually makes the whole defense go like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Because I think it's obvious that the offense is scrambling.
Both sides have a plan, right? That's part of what happens in a game, and you practice it. Mobile quarterbacks, this is when their big plays happen. You know, fortunate enough to be around Michael Vick, that was his carrying card.
I think this is such an interesting perspective because I think one of the points that I was trying to make with regards to the pressures being the process and the sack being the result, the quarterbacks that you just mentioned and Michael Vick, you can explain why it didn't turn into a sack. That's because you're facing a quarterback who has the ability to roll out of the pocket versus some guys might rack up sack numbers because they're going up against a pocket passer with a bad offensive line.
Perfect example, and thanks for the setup. There's a guy that came out of college, I'm not gonna name who it was, he led the country in sacks, but when you actually studied him, he either beat a bad offensive tackle or it was a very, very late production. Early in the year, people were saying this guy's a first-round pick, and he wasn't. Right? And it's because if you watch enough tape like we do, you sooner or later you'll figure it out. It's not all about just the production. You got to look at why the production was happening too.
On the other end of that spectrum are guys who have all the traits and the abilities but don't have the production, and we still see get taken in the first. How do you find that balance of, hey, he's got all the traits, no production, against a guy who doesn't really have the traits you want but does have the production in college?
That's a really tough discussion because that happens every year. And it happens when the season is over and you get coaches involved in the evaluation process and you have a scouting staff involved. Now you got to marry up those two groups and find the best players. The scout has spent a couple years on that player at minimum. Coach is new to that player. And what hits the human eye, right? The flash of athleticism and speed and length. If that first exposure is at the combine, even if he doesn't have production, if he comes down that tunnel and runs a 4.6 and he's got 35-inch arms, guess who likes him? Every D-line coach in the country.
But that's why there's so many busts
Right.
too.
You got to dig deeper into the player. What kind of dude is he? How does he learn? What's his instincts like? Where can you take him realistically based on all those traits? There's about his character and his instincts for the game. He might get better. Where this other guy, he's not such a hard worker. He may not get better.
The conversation I've been wanting to have for quite some time, I think of Reuben Bain, one of my favorite players from this year's draft. We always talk arm length. So much discussion about his arm length. Is he really a defensive end? Can he play that on the next level, or does he have to kick inside to a 3 technique? You've watched Reuben Bain play. Is he a guy you think needs to kick in?
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. It depends how they're going to use him. You know, he's an excellent player. A guy's effort, his want to, that means more to me than just arm length.
What is so interesting to me about the arm length conversation, they have been playing at that size with whatever limitation it is their entire lives. And they've figured out ways to work around it. And obviously there's a jump in talent. And so you always kind of have to figure out what will transfer to the NFL or translate to that level. But you figure out ways around it.
And we got to see Reuben Bain throughout the playoffs as well against the best from the Big Ten, from the SEC, from every conference. So
it's okay that he's your favorite player.
Yeah, I love his game, I'm telling you.
You're not alone.
Yes,
You're not alone.
right.
I want to ask, because you played on the defensive line,
Yep.
I'm curious about the difference between size on the defensive line, because I feel like there are fewer space eater bodies. Like you don't see the like Vince Wilforks out there anymore. I looked up. You brought up the Falcons, and the Falcons do not have a defensive tackle on their roster that is over 300 pounds. You would normally think of those defensive tackles as the guys who could get up to be like real big, and you don't see that as much. Is that something you see coming back around?
With the evolution of 12 personnel, which is 1 running back, 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, you've got to have the versatility of those big defensive linemen to play all over. And that's what makes the Peter Woods and the LT Overtons, those guys are so valuable because they can play defensive end. They can play a 3 technique. If you line them over the center and give them a one-on-one go, that's where they can win. They can be successful. You mentioned the Atlanta Falcons. You need to have your whole team, in my opinion, be similar. If you have 4 guys across your front that are all the same, I think it's more effective.
What's really interesting is I've had to flip my head on the whole concept. 1st and 10 nose tackles that played all the rundowns. You move back a little bit on drafting those guys because they didn't have pass rush upside, right? Now, with all the dime and nickel that's going on, puts you in a bad position because you've got lighter defenders on the field. So what do you need? You need big. I look at these big guys we have talked about, you push them up a little bit because they give you versatility in today's game.
Well, a guy like Dexter Lawrence, he can rush the passer and play the run.
I used to think, there are certain parameters for height, weight, speed for defensive linemen, and, you typically wanted guys who were in the bigger range. I look at Aaron Donald. Has he changed the way we see the DT position and what guys can do there?
Well, you're hurting my heart.
I'm so sorry.
That's the unicorn, right?
Right. We clearly were going to take Aaron Donald, and he got taken the pick in front of us. A guy like that, you don't see guys like that. So he is a unicorn, but they're exceptions.
Yeah.
And you're not going to build teams on exceptions.
One of the things that I didn't understand as a young defensive lineman was the importance of hand usage. Can you speak to just being able to evaluate how good guys are using their hands to separate, to get off blocks, to pass rush?
I mean, you can't stop the surge unless you get your hands in the right place, right? It takes a lot of factors in terms of pad level or leverage and being able to uncoil your hips to stop a push by an offensive lineman or a get off by him, but you got to have your hands in the right place to do that. It's a key to success.
One of the guys I talked about, LT Overton, has the ability coming out of college to get his hands into somebody. He physically is strong enough to just throw them.
Best player I ever saw with his hands as a pass rusher, since we're on D lineman, is John Abraham. Being able to counter body weight, that takes a different sense and instinct, and John had that higher level than anybody I've ever done that rushed the pass.
But you know what you did? The best thing you guys did with John when he played is you cut back his snaps. Because when he played 75 snaps a game, he was not nearly as effective as when he played 45 because he had all that explosiveness, and we were like, God, they finally figured it out.
One of the things I'm always curious about in the evaluation process is when a guy has all the skills, he has the ability, but doesn't have the motor. You see him loaf, you see him take plays off at times, but he's got everything else. You love him, but he's not always as consistent as you'd like. How do you make that determination?
First question, when does that happen?
When is it okay to happen?
No, it's not okay, but what I'm saying is let's look into the logic of why the player is taking the play off.
Got it.
Has he played 80 plays in the game? Now, if he's playing 40 plays a game and he's loafing, then there's a problem.
So I've seen players that were fantastic players that instinctively knew what plays they could make and they couldn't. You got to be smart about it. You can't be so hard on players. At the end of the day, it's the tools and it's production and it's the traits.
And I think defensive line is just different as well because you're asking 300-plus pound men to shed blocks, to run every single play. There's no position that requires that same amount of effort.
But that's the reason why they wave in. The good teams will wave in defensive linemen.
That's so interesting, too, because you do see a wide receiver will make a big play, and it's a 60-yard catch, and they run downfield and they come to the sideline. It's like a breather. Meanwhile, that guy is
don't get to do that. Right.
That's hard.
Yeah,
like you
they
said,
don't come
they're a lot
out.
bigger.
No, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
They're a lot bigger.
And you guys have shared so many wonderful personal stories about players you've evaluated. But I'm wondering if there are any more just young defensive linemen that you got to see during the process, or anyone that you really fought for during the pre-draft process that went on to become a future great.
I would say that Aaron Donald, in terms of watching somebody on tape that you couldn't mistake his ability. This is an unusual human being. This guy's a really special player. So I would say it was Aaron.
I'm getting progressively sadder for you.
Thank you. So is the city of Chicago.
Well, we're talking a lot about the evolution of the position and size, and some of these things have come up. For more on some of the changes at this specific spot, or I guess the many spots on the defensive line, here's Scheme Shift.
Successful defensive linemen come in all shapes and sizes. There are interior run defenders who take on double teams and clear space for linebacker run-throughs. There are pass rush specialists who get into a sprinter stance on third down to beat the offensive tackle around the outside. But today's defensive coordinators are finding more ways to get the most out of their defensive line, regardless of what their superpower is. Defenses can use the offense's pass protection rules against them by encouraging the offense to devote 2 blockers to 1 pass rusher, only to create room for a stunt inside. Athletic defensive linemen can drop into coverage and get their hands into the passing lane. And if you're a one-on-one winner, the defense can overload one side of the formation to create a true one-on-one situation on the way to the quarterback. The defensive line is not a one-size-fits-all position. Different skill sets and abilities come together to form a unit that can rush the passer and stop the run. With every year passing, more dominant fronts find themselves playing late in the playoffs, and the defensive line only becomes more important.
I think the beauty of defensive linemen is they come in all shapes and sizes.
Like us here at the table.
Yeah! Well, thank you to our team at Sumer Sports. Thank you to Howie Long. And remember, draft night is loud, but evaluations are quiet. And we live in the quiet. Until next time.